When you are.
Recording in progress.
Ready.
Good evening. This is the Federal City Council Finance, Economic Development, Regional Affairs Committee for the evening of Tuesday, May 23rd at 5 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. I am stepping in as chair at the moment because Han Tran is on his way elsewhere. However, he is dialed in by Zoom, as is other member of the committee, Councilmember Jack Dobie. So my name is Linda Kochmar. We'll call the meeting to order at precisely 5:01 p.m. And is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move forward with committee business. Approval of the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 23rd. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is Microsoft Enterprise Agreement with Thomas Fichtner.
Thank you. Hold if I move the microphone in front of my face. All right. Thank you, Council President and Committee Chair, Deputy Mayor, Committee Member Walsh. Before you tonight is the approval of the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. This is an agreement that we do every 3 years with Microsoft. It covers all of our main software that we use. So from the operating system on the computers that everybody uses, all the staff uses, to Microsoft Office, to the servers that power everything in the back end. And everything in between, this agreement covers that. As part of the staff report, I prepared quite a bit of detail into the exact nuts and bolts of it. The way that Microsoft Enterprise Agreement works is we approve a holistic contract over 3 years, and then we pay it once each year, so annually. So there are three payments. So the other thing to note about this particular contract is they are in a transition period, and kind of as I explained in the staff report, we're moving more from just buying software and keeping it to buying it as a service, as a lot of the technology industry is moving to that. So you may have heard of Microsoft 365, and that is the cloud or hosted version, and it's a subscription model versus we buy the license and then we kind of pay a smaller amount of maintenance, or software assurance is how Microsoft calls it. Instead, we just pay an annual fee, and it is what it is. And it's per license that we buy. So because we're going to be transitioning to that this year, that is also a way that we license it. So the way that I have calculated this particular contract is going to be a not to exceed. And so council will be approving a not to exceed certain amount. And so what we have right now is there are 3 payments, and there's some variables here, and I'm going to explain that. So there's 3 payments, and it's taken from the 23, 24, and 25 budgets, respectively. The total maximum to the cost to the city will be $625,825.69, and that's inclusive of a current tax rate of 10.1%, per the quote that I have also included in the packet. So again, that total $625,000 is meant for a not to exceed cost over 3 years. What we have, so the city has put in, or IT department requested and got approved as part of the budget for 2023 and 2024 is an additional $60,000 in addition to our current amount that we have to cover the Microsoft licensing. And the reason we have that is for the addition of Microsoft 365 product. And so currently we have $181,000 annually, and there is a total delta of about $82,000 that we would be short over the entire contract. And the reason for that is I've added some increases, so it depends on how we fluctuate, because again, the new product is a subscription basis, or subscription, not we buy it and we pay a short amount of software or licensing or maintenance for it. So that being said, as employees come and go, we can modify our agreement accordingly. And so depending on if the, the IT budget can cover, it has some flexibility in it. But if there's a large hiring of staff, or if there's some additional product licensing that we need, this will cover that over 3 years. So again, we're kind of forecasting this out for 3 years. So other than that, it's covering the licensing that we need. We've done this historically since about 2007, 2008. Every 3 years, we do an annual or a triennial agreement with Microsoft, and that covers the licensing to make all of our systems operate. So that's kind of an overarching summary. If there's any questions, happy to answer.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas. So I neglected to say that we are joined by Councilmember Jack Walsh and Deputy Mayor Susan Honda. So committee members, are there any questions? Seeing none, are there questions from
I have a question.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
So as we hire more staff, because I assume as we grow, we're not going to be,
I would hope so.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would hope so too. This will adjust to that.
Yeah, it is. And so the reason why it's a not to exceed is we've calculated a little bit of flexibility, and it's a 5% growth per year. So that way, in the event that we need to hire more people, we can request that budget, but I don't have to come back to council and ask for more money or to extend or amend this contract. The contract will take care of it, and if my budget can't absorb it, then I'll come back and I'll ask for additional funding. But at this point right now,
Okay,
we're
sounds good.
barely covering it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Are there any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve the proposed agreement.
Second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to
It's
approve.
actually, the motion is to forward it to council consent agenda.
You're right.
Oh, okay. I move that we forward the proposed agreement to the council consent agenda.
I'll second that.
So the motion is,
Okay, I'll do it a little better. I move to forward the proposed agreement to the June 6, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
perfect, thank you. Han, you're seconding
Okay.
that, correct?
I'll second that. yes.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the purchase of portable handheld radios. Again, Thomas.
All right, thank you. So before you is purchase of, actually, it's not the handheld, it's the portable police car radios, or mobile radios. So council has previously approved an additional purchase of 11 police vehicles. And because they're expanding the fleet, we need additional equipment for that. This purchase is to allow for procuring the 11 radios that would be installed in those 11 new vehicles. They are the Motorola radios that we're buying, compatible with the new PCERN P25 system that we're about to go live with next month. This is being purchased leveraging the PCERN procurement contract, is how our vendor has put it. This is also available on other procurement contracts such as NASBO too, but the way that the quote is written is for the PCERN procurement. And that is it.
Thank you, Thomas. Are there any questions?
What's the
committee-
delivery, what's the delivery schedule? How long does it take?
I've heard 6 months.
Oh, my.
So it's a little ways out there. We're hoping that it'll be quicker, but we've heard it's pretty lengthy delay.
So I have one other question. Do we look at anything other than Motorola as a solution on P25?
No, we've not. We're staying in line with the exact spec of the PCERN radio for what all the agencies are getting are purchasing. So it's the APX 6500. Yeah, the APX 6500 is the model that we're buying. to be in sync with the rest of the fleet. So it's all the same.
And if it's a 6-month lead time, what are we going to do in the interim?
Fortunately for us, the cars are also a little ways out, so they aren't ready to go as well. So we have a little bit of flexibility. Again, we're going to try and push on them as well, but again, as you are very familiar with this industry,
Yeah.
the equipment is we're a little stuck with that.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I see we have Deputy Mayor Honda.
So you're talking about 11 new police cars. Are those the last 11 that need to be equipped, or do we have more in line behind that?
That's a good question that I do not have the answer with.
Okay.
I thought that we had already purchased all of them that we needed, but I was incorrect. So I heard that we were buying 11 more from Commander Schwan and the chief, and so that they are requesting the additional equipment to go along with that.
So it's possible that we'll need to equip more than 11 more cars.
If the police department adds more than these 11 cars in the future, then yes, we will need to buy additional equipment to go with them.
Do we get a better deal if we buy more at one time?
Not when it's all state procurement based.
Okay.
The price is the price.
Okay, well, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thomas, I have one. Since we hired 13 new officers, but we're only getting 11 cars, we already had 2.
I apologize. So these are very good questions. Operationally wise, these are actually better suited for the chief or operations on the police side of it. We're just outfitting the cars. So
Okay.
like I said, I wasn't aware of these
Okay,
11 as well. So
We're good, just curious.
So.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I move approval of the purchase of 11 police car radios from Motorola Solutions, Inc. for the amount not to exceed $37,947.88.
Okay, let's,
I read the wrong one. Got too many things on the list. I move to forward the proposed purchase of 11 Motorola police car radios to the June 6, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
oh, perfect. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we still have Thomas for the next item on our agenda, who's going to talk about King County One Net Customer Service Contract Agreement. And it's amendment number 1.
yes, thank you, Council President. So before you is the King County, it's INET, so it stands for Internet. They are the city's ISP or Internet Service Provider. So everything that you're seeing up here, making Zoom work, it's all working like you guys more than likely have Comcast at home. We have King County INET through the city. They've been the city's ISP since probably early 2000s or late 90s. They were here before I was employed. I've been here, will be 20 years in September. So they've got a great product. We get a decent amount of service. This particular contract before you will be increasing our total burstable bandwidth from 400 megs up to a gig sustained, both up and down. So as we upload documents up to a gig
Should we
or
both
down.
unmute and say, ooh?
You are unmuted.
Oh,
Thanks, Steve. I also agree. That's very nice too. So we do get, with King County INET, it makes it easier than going with a separate ISP because we also do have connection to the intergovernmental network, which is how we get state returns when the police query, whether it be a person or a license plate, it all runs through the IGN. And that's a much more closed, segregated network specific for public safety agencies, and King County INET has a connection to that. So this is our primary and sole provider at the moment. As I said, we are upgrading to a gig, also in preparation for not only our backup strategy that council approved, and I'm very thankful of, but also the Microsoft 365. So the more we leverage online resources, the more we need more bandwidth. I will be coming to you later for a secondary option for redundancy. So if something should happen to this link as our primary, we'll have a fallback and still be able to conduct business. Before you tonight, the contract existing was $1,272 a month, and the new contract will be $1,364 for an increase of $92 per month. And like I said, that is the reason for it. They have readjusted their rates, and we are increasing from 400 meg to a gig. That is all.
Thank you, Thomas. Committee members, are there any questions? I don't see any from the committee and none from council. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move to forward the proposed customer service contract amendment to the June 6, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
All right, and just for clarifications, that's contract amendment 1. And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
All right.
So we're moving right along here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
You bet. Do you get a 20-year pin? He's not listening.
Do we do that?
We should get a 20-year pin.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. Oh,
Budget cuts.
that, okay. Hi, Tanya. So now we're going to talk about Tourism Enhancement Grant 2023, Round 2, July through December. Tanya Carter, thank you.
Good evening, Federac Committee, Council President Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Honda, and Council Members Tran, Walsh, and Dovey. Nice to see you this evening. So this is actually the first of 3 things that I'll be presenting tonight. So for the Tourism Enhancement Grant recommendations for 2023, you have before you a staff report which summarizes the tourism enhancement grants, as well as the actual applications from the 4 tourism enhancement grants. The applicants this round are 3 applicants that we've had in the past. Those are Elite Productions, which is a bodybuilding competition, also Miss Washington Volunteer Organization, and then the Federal Way Harmony Kings. So those 3 organizations have had applications with us before. The 4th one is Pacific Raceways. They are in unincorporated King County, just to the east of us, off of Highway 18, and they will be hosting for, I'm not sure how many years, but many, many years, they've hosted the Northwest Nationals for the NHRA, which is the National Hot Rod Association. They have also applied for grant funding to Federal Way. As background, they are, this is one of 21 similar events in the country, so it is very unique. It is one of the only places that is able to host this kind of event in the Pacific Northwest. And the Raceway is also pursuing several other national level events in the coming years, and we have had initial discussions with the owners of the Raceway to initiate more cooperation and collaboration with these type of events in the future, which would certainly enhance tourism to Federal Way, due to the fact that, for example, with this event alone, they generally are receiving about 30,000 attendees a year. So that is the background on the 4 applications, which you also have in your packet. The financial impacts are essentially, to give a background, the lodging tax funds are collected from the hotels every year, and we receive, depending on the year, between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. We have sufficient funds to cover what would be needed to make up the difference, to agree with what the Lodging Tax Committee recommended, which is to pass forward all of these 4 applications at the requested amount. There would be a budget amendment that would be required for $10,500 to pull funds from the Lodging Tax Fund. However, as mentioned, there are more than sufficient funds currently in the fund and every year that do get pulled into the fund that would more than cover this $10,500 budget amendment. So the options to consider this evening would be to approve all 4 to pass on to council, or to not approve. And those are the 2 options. And if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Tanya. First, let's see, committee members. I see Jack Dovey has his hand up.
Yeah, I don't know how to push
I
the
love
button
that.
to say it.
He held his hand up.
My question is, the national dragster races out there in east of us. How many beds do we actually? I mean, I can't really read. How many beds do you think we're going to fill? It seems like most of the large ones we've always done have always been around the aquatic center. What changed and made us decide to go into the raceway?
Great question, Council Moldovi. A couple clarifications. The applicants actually come to Federal Way to apply, so it's nothing that we actually would approach an applicant necessarily. Specifically, in this case, we didn't approach the applicant. To answer your second question, there is an estimation, if you look on page 41 of the documents, that Pacific Raceway estimates that there would be a little over 1,900 heads and beds. That is out of the 30,000 that they anticipate, which has historically been attending the event. And this number was arrived at through experience, through past history, and also through talking to the local hotels in Federal Way.
So being that they're on east part of King County past Auburn and Kent, well, how many of those the number that you just said are going to migrate and stay in Federal Way? Did our hoteliers say they're full those times? They say that this is a good thing?
Yes, yes. And the number 1,961 is an estimate based on those conversations with the hotels as well. So that of the 30,000, there, and just maybe for a little bit of context, in Auburn, there's only, I believe, still 11 hotels. Don't quote me on the exact number, but, roughly 11 hotels. In Kent, there's roughly about the same. And so in the catchment area, there literally is no other place for any, let's say, heads and beds. Another point for consideration is that this event will be televised. It will be televised to approximately 1 million viewers on Fox Sports. So there is also a very healthy appetite from the Raceway to work with the Economic Development Department to put together promotions for Federal Way in all of the marketing materials. And that could entail things, for example, signage on the fences. So for example, when the cameras are panning around the Raceway, that could be a possibility we could talk about, right? To get some Federal Way signage on, where the cameras are panning on their website, also helping direct traffic for booking hotels on their website, also include, in the program, also include, at the event, announcements, things like that. These are all things that are up for negotiation with them. They are very interested in partnering with Federal Way. So, just again, from an economic development standpoint, building this relationship over multiple years from an economic standpoint would be quite robust and, could be something, for example, and again, these are examples, these are not promises or anything that's been negotiated. So I'm just trying to demonstrate the types of economic drivers that, could be interesting. Potentially having some kind of a, let's say, event where the drivers would come and, do a signing here, or they would do some kind of a talk or things like that. So ways to tie the event more closely to Federal Way, are also possibilities that the owners of the racetrack are very interested in furthering those discussions. I hope that was, yep.
Okay, I get all that. How much is Auburn and Kent putting in? Are they participating like we are?
So it's an application process that goes to the Lodging Tax Committee. So it's I couldn't tell you how much they've applied for and if they've received that funding, but I do believe that they are applying as well for lodging tax funding from those cities.
Okay. Okay. The only reason I ask these questions is, in all the years, this is a large number, more so than we've ever. Well, I mean, when we did aquatic center and diving and things like that, we spent hundreds of thousands, but I don't remember ever doing a 50,000 or even a 40,000 or 30,000 to anybody. And so this is kind of like not the norm that I've ever seen. It seems higher than normal that we normally do through this fund. So that's only my question. Thank you.
Sure.
So maybe, I see Councilmember Seva Dawson, who's joined us, has her hand up. Do you want to, since she's on that committee, do you want to go ahead and tell us about that?
Yes,
Thank you, Council President. And by the way, I just joined. I was on YouTube watching because I wasn't able to join. I didn't have the link. So I'm glad I was able to join now. Thank you, Thomas, for sending it to me. Anyway, yes, I just wanted to add to what Tanya was saying. The committee did review it, and we did talk back and forth about the dollar amount. And I think what we all decided was that, yes, it's going to have a bigger impact, and the return on investment could be high potentially. And we, if no other reason, I think it will put Federal Way on the map and people will see it, and we're not Seattle. So, I mean, it could be possibly a place that people would like to visit or stay, because one thing we talked about is Auburn or Kent are not on the I-5 corridor, and we are. And so that could be something that future tourists could be interested in, or somewhere nearby. So I think the committee, although I do agree with what Councilmember Dovey said, and the committee discussed that extensively, that this would be the highest that we've done. But I think at the end of the day, the committee really decided it was worth the money and the investment that we're going to get from it. So just wanted to share that and support what Tanya is presenting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Savidasan. Committee, I see, let's go with Jack Walsh. Councilmember Jack Walsh.
Okay. Yeah, just, I'm not opposed to it, but I think that we need to make sure we've been realistic on the ROI, kind of along with what Jack Dovey was saying. Looking at, they're anticipating 1,961 room nights, but that's spread over three days. So I think that it's more like maybe, 6,000 or 7,000 at nights any given night. And do we know how many hotel rooms are available closer in Kent and Auburn? And also with Auburn, with the big with the Muckleshoot hotel there at the casino, I mean, that's all of a sudden there's a lot more rooms there than I bet that's multiplying the total number of rooms that Auburn has, I suspect. But
So, reasonable question. It's impossible to know, how much percentage of the participants in the attendees are in each one of the hotels. People book last minute. People also are booking, under maybe certain, let's say, organizations, other, travel, online travel associations, for example, Expedia, where you don't necessarily see the pass-through. Anyway, there's a lot of different factors that we would not be able to control or figure out. These are their best estimations based on historical data. The other thing I would also encourage the committee to consider is that with these with tourism events, there's not ever a direct one-to-one. And so it's really difficult to assign, if there's $100 spent for a room night, that, $100 exactly will be put back into the community. But with the partnership, what the intention is to have a longer-term partnership whereby, for example, in this instance, if we were to just be very specific about ROI, they have expressed that whatever the amount of funds that would be provided, for example, if it should be 50,000, then they would estimate that the return in media exposure in the combination that was mentioned before would be 100,000. So essentially roughly double. So I think that would be, if there's like a hard ROI that we're looking for, that would be maybe something to consider, is that ROI of $100,000 media exposure, in addition to the room nights and in addition to any of whatever the participants would be spending within the city.
okay. And I mean, there's really no way to really realistically measure the actual ROI on something like this, is there?
Great question. If the council has specific requests on ROI, then we can track it. And so one thing about ROI that's important to remember is if there is something specific, for example, room nights, or for example, media exposure, which would be counted in impressions or things like that, that's something that we can certainly track if you have a specific desire. However, the Economic Development Department would work with the owners to identify a reasonable list of metrics that could be tracked and reported on. And, I'd be happy to report on that when, let's say, hoping that, this would go through. I would be happy to report on that, what those metrics would be. And, certainly if the committee or council had any additional ROIs or metrics that they'd like to see in addition to what would be kind of agreed upon, happy to work on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry, I don't.
Go
interrupt
ahead,
there,
Jack.
So, the three that we're talking about, the Elite Production, Miss Washington, and Fedway Harmony Kings, we've done those for many, many years, and it's always the same amount of money, it seems like. So we know that they work and they're here. I'm going back to thinking when we did Sandcastles and we spent 80,000 one year and 30,000 the second year, or whatever the numbers were. What's the ask going to be for next year and the year after? Because just putting 50 grand for one time is we're setting ourselves up to be asked again next year. So how are we going to judge if it's really good? And what are we going to say when they ask for 50 next year and we, have all the other things coming up? It just seems like a big ask for a first-time project outside of our city by 15, 20 miles.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have Deputy Mayor Honda who'd like to say something here.
Okay.
Thank you. So Pacific Raceways isn't in the city, and this is unusual that we would be offering any kind of funding to something outside of the city. So my concern is, I won't be able to support this unless I have information about Kent and Auburn and other local cities and their LTACs, if they're putting money into this. So I'd like to know that before this comes to a vote, because I couldn't support this if they're not also supporting it.
I know that they are. I just couldn't tell you how much and if LTAC has already agreed, but I would be happy to investigate that and provide that to committee and council.
Okay, because I need to know that.
Sure.
Or else I will have to vote against it. Secondly, you talk about the media exposure. Who's going to control that? Will that be the City of Federal Way saying this is what we want you to show, or will it be someone on their team saying, oh, we think we'll show Wild Waves or we'll show the PAC? Who's going to control what the media exposure is?
So I think if I understand your question, and maybe to kind of rephrase it in case, to explain it a little bit more, what the media exposure would be, a two-part answer. Number one, there is a target audience that is, the type of audience that so there's websites, which have a certain target audience. There's also the viewers on the, television that are a certain type of audience. And so that audience is essentially tailored to the type of demographic and the type of people that would watch that type of event. I don't have the details exactly on what that demographic of person is, for example, their income, their personal profile, things like that. I can certainly find that out, for the various website and TV and what have you. The second part of it is on the media, they would, I'm sorry, I forgot the second part. Yep.
There are things that we would like to have
Oh, yes.
attention
Right.
to.
Yeah.
Like the Performing Arts Center, maybe Dumas Bay, maybe Wild Waves, things here in Federal Way that we think should be highlighted. So are we going to tell them, if we give you this funding, this is what we want you to highlight? Or are we going to let them make the decision and they may not know what we want highlighted?
Thank you for that clarification. So this would be mainly promoting the brand and the city of Federal Way. So it would be, focusing on Federal Way, the logo, if you will, centered on opportunity. It would also include, for example, not determined yet because we haven't negotiated with them, but for example, the Visit Federal Way website. And then specifically to your question, that would be something that would be more on a granular level with the hotels. For example, working with the hotels to put together packages whereby, for example, we would have, small brochures in the rooms, or for any participants that will be coming, some kind of a information packet or things, specifically for them to review. But it wouldn't be something where, for example, on the television that Dumas Bay or Wild Waves would be featured. That the television side would be more of the brand, and then on the the more granular side, depending on what the medium is, if it would be a brochure in the rooms or on the website, or on the day of, maybe there would be some way that the businesses could be highlighted in like a business directory, or again, these are examples, but certainly if that is the concern, that certainly could be worked in at different points, but not at every single point, because it may not be appropriate, for example, like on the television.
But who's going to determine that?
So that would be a negotiation between economic development and the owners of the racetrack, and that would certainly, it sounds like there's some specific desires, and that is duly noted and can absolutely be added into the discussions.
Okay, I have two other questions. In the past, we've talked about having an event come forward for funding maybe 2 or 3 times, and then not funding them. So these last 3, we funded at least twice, maybe even 3 times. Is there a reason that we're continuing to fund them, even though that we've talked about not doing that in the past?
So maybe to just take it a step back conceptually, the way that the lodging tax fund is meant to operate is that, essentially Federal Way has heads and beds in the hotels. And the hotels then are getting a certain amount, a couple percentage points taken off in sales tax, and that sales tax is then circulated back to the city. So in essence, conceptually, it's a circular fund. And so to maybe be a little bit black and white, just for simplicity, it doesn't really matter what the event is. The goal is to get heads and beds. And so it wouldn't necessarily matter year after year if an event comes. What actually is great is if, conceptually, a year after year, an event comes and is, applying for funding and can show that it has a historical, precedence of having heads and beds, because that shows that there's a large amount of trust, that there's, people are habituated to coming to the event. And so it actually is kind of advantageous if an event kind of keeps applying. Like, there's no reason why an event wouldn't want to apply, and there's no reason why we wouldn't want them to apply year after year.
Except we've talked about before not giving money to the same event over and over.
The fund earns, between $200,000 and $300,000 a year, and the only thing that the fund can be used for
I understand that.
is that type of event. And so, we are passively accepting applications, which we hope in the future we will be able to have a strategy to be more proactive. But as long as the applications come in and the heads and beds are happening, it's a circular fund, and it's exactly accomplishing the goal of the fund and the program. So there wouldn't be a reason to not fund it unless they weren't
And
performing.
then my last question is, I know in the past we've talked about making sure we have enough money in the account so that if there's a big event coming into the Aquatic Center, that we have the funding in that account to give to Seattle Sports or whatever they're.
Sports Commission, yeah.
Are there any events coming to the Aquatic Center that we will need to have a large sum of money to provide? And will this, taking this, the 10,000, 400 out of the fund, will that impact that?
Great question. So we already have an event that was bid on and won. There will be a contract in for, I apologize, it's either 2025 or 2026 for an event at the Aquatic Center. That would be a contract between the city and the Sports Commission for them to run that event, and that would roughly be, $30,000 to $50,000. There certainly is enough currently now in the account for that, now and in the future, based on the revenues that'll be coming in. And we are now starting the bidding process with the Sports Commission for a possible, additional event at the pool in a future as well. And even with that event, both for the bidding process and for the management contract, there would be more exponentially enough than what would be needed for any of those. So we would absolutely be covered with just the annual revenue, but in addition, what's in the reserves right now, we would absolutely have enough for that and several more if that should happen.
Okay, that's really important that we have enough to
Yeah.
do that. Thank you.
So,
Agreed.
Councilmember Tran?
Council President, I hate to do this, but I have to leave now. They start voting about 15 minutes ago.
Safe travels.
Have a good flight.
All right, thank you. See you later.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So how much is in LTAC account currently?
I don't have the exact number, but it is over $1 million.
Okay, all right. And, you know, as far as repeating things, I mean, I think that makes sense, if they're getting heads in beds, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. With, you know, with the Pacific Raceways ones, I mean, you know, personally, I kind of have my doubts about it, but the thing is that since it's the hotels are on the LTAC committee, and if they think that it's really their dollars that we're the custodian of, and so to speak. I mean, I that's not quite the right way, but I mean, more or less. But I mean, if they think it's a good return, I mean, I'm inclined to go along with them, even though, you know, I may be a little bit doubtful. But I think that we should, you know, honor what they think will put the most heads in beds. So anyway.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Sepadossan, you have your hand up. Do you still want to say something?
Yes, I do, and
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you so much. What I wanted to add is, with the raceway, we may not see a whole lot this year, but one thing the hoteliers agreed to do was maybe have some kind of a goodie bag or whatever it's called, and that way then they can track how many people are coming in for this event. Correct me, Tanya, if I heard that wrong, but that's something that they agreed to do, just to see how many people we got this year for heads in bed. But I think in the future it will catch, and because they said they're going to put it, they're going to have City of Federal Way, Kent and Auburn on their website, and whatever, you know, we negotiate our logo. I think it would still put us on the map for future programs. And I heard, Council President, you're concerned about, or not concerned, but you said about the new hotel in Auburn. But I still think at the end of the day, maybe not this year, but we'll see some kind of, the partnership will continue. And I think we'll see a benefit there. And sometimes you take risks. I mean, you know, so I think, and the hoteliers understand that. And they, again, you know, there was a lot of discussion about this, and the final decision was to fund them at not the full request, but $25,000, I believe. And again, it's because we're just going to try and see. And the magnitude, I mean, if they were willing to accept whatever we fund them at, scale back what they're offering us also. But again, the hoteliers are agreeable, and they're trying to also see and track how many heads and beds this has brought this year. But I don't want this year's outcome to determine how we move forward with this group. I think we need to take the risk, and also because these funds need to be used for this, I think we need to be more aggressive and seeking out and supporting. And to Council President, Deputy Mayor Honda's question also, I think these are programs that have sustained Federal Ways hotels and beds, so continuing to fund them is critical, and continuing to support, because that's our share in supporting what's happening in our city.
Councilmember Suffer-Dawson, you just said you suggested funding them at 25 and not 50, because in the.
No, I what we said, but I'm sorry. We discussed. I mean, we talked about a lot of the funding at 25 or 50.
Okay.
And so at the end of the conversation, I think we agreed. And Tanya, I don't remember what we agreed on. That's where I'm struggling.
That's
But what
correct. It was 50, yes.
It was, so what I'm saying is they'll scale back or scale down at whatever we fund them. So, I mean, if the council, I would hate not to fund them, but the committee decided on 50. So I think it would be great. And including Brian, who's PAC person who said it, it would be, we don't know what it's going to do, granted. But at the same time, I think, and, future thinking, when we're looking 5 years, 10 years down the line, I would hate to lose an opportunity, but again, it's up to the council and FEDRAC, of course.
Thank you.
But wanted to share with you what the committee discussed and how they were gonna track heads and beds by giving out, what did they call it? I'm sorry, not goodie bags, but.
Swag bag.
Yeah, those.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Dovey.
I just have two clarifying questions. Tanya, I heard you said there was $1 million in the economic development budget. Are you sure of that? I've never seen a number that large in that budget.
Steve Groom is on the phone. He could probably confirm the exact number, but I believe it is somewhere above $1 million, and that would be the reserve. And then we bring in between $200,000 and $300,000 a year.
Okay. Well, Steve, could you answer that? Because I know that I can verify, I know the 100 to 200,000, that's what's on the chart, but do we have $1 million sitting in that fund?
We do. We get, prior to COVID, we used to get 300,000 per year. The last 2 years, it dropped down to 150, and we're almost back to 300. There had been there is a fund balance, and I don't have the exact number in front of me. I apologize. I'm remote as well.
Okay. Well, okay. Hey, Linda, can I make a motion?
Go ahead.
I move to forward the Tourism Enhancement Grant request to the June 6, 2023 consent agenda.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. And any other discussion we want, we can have at the general meeting.
I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Yeah.
Tanya, will you get back to, at least, I'm very interested in what the other cities are funding these guys at?
Yes, and I can also provide some preliminary metrics that we could possibly use as measures to maybe provide a little bit more context to what I shared tonight.
Thank you, I appreciate
So
it.
one other thing I'm wondering too, Tanya, is that if we have $1 million in a fund sitting there, we've talked in the past about saving the money for something, for something that would make a great big impact. I don't know if the committee has ever talked about that. I'm just curious.
We have, and I actually have a presentation on the first Economic Development Quarterly Update, so I would love to come back to that and provide more detail on that.
Great, thank you. Thank you. No other comments? We'll move forward to the next item on the agenda, which is, again, with Tanya Carter, it's the Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Agreement.
Great, thank you, Council President. So at the beginning of the year, the Economic Development Department presented permission and basically to Council permission to apply for the Economic Development Partnership Grant. And this is just for the acceptance of the grant. We have received the grant at $60,000. It is a grant that has been historically annually accepted by council and applied for, of course, by the Economic Development Department. So the terms, the financial terms of the grant is that it is a $60,000 matching grant, which means that $30,000 of it would be coming from the economic development budget, which there is sufficient budget in there. And this is just a review of, the actual partnership that we presented when we were requesting to apply for it. And essentially, the staff memo just recounts what the grant would be used for. And essentially, what the grant would be used for is to start an annual business outreach survey to the business community. It's a very simple survey, only 3 questions. 2 are quantitative, 1 is qualitative, and the first year would serve as the baseline for surveying businesses. It would also serve as the baseline for gathering and confirming contact information of the businesses, which is sometimes very difficult to get, which we figured out during COVID. We didn't necessarily have the best contact information. And then in subsequent years, the same 3 questions would be asked, and that would provide kind of a, let's say, a feedback from the business community on what the progress on programs that end up being developed based on the qualitative question, the last question in the survey, which essentially is what keeps you up at night as a business owner. And the subsequent business retention and expansion programs are the ones that would be created out of that qualitative survey. So essentially, data-based, response to business needs in the city is what this outreach survey is meant to do. And the Economic Development Department is just asking for permission to accept this grant so that we can move on with the survey.
Councilmember Dovey, being a member of the committee,
Yeah.
any questions?
Yeah, I move to forward the proposed Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Grant to the June 6, 2023 agenda for approval.
Okay, and I'll second that, but we have some questions here. Councilmember Walsh?
Just a quick question. So it's a $60,000 grant. I'm unclear. Is it 60,000 coming from the port and then 30,000 that Federal Way is doing? Is it 30,000 from the port and 30,000 from Federal Way?
The first one, so 60,000 from the port.
So
and
there'll
then
be a total of
30,000.
$90,000 that will go towards.
That is
okay, it was
correct.
kind of ambiguous. in
I
the
apologize for that.
presentation,
Thank
so,
you for the
okay.
question. Yes.
I have a question. That's a lot of money for a survey.
So it would, thank you, it's for the survey and then also for the business retention and expansion programs that result from the survey. So just as an example for context, if, for example, the businesses said we have, in the qualitative question, right, what keeps you up at night as a business owner, if they said we have a tremendous problem with broken windows in our retail storefronts, then a program would be created out of that funding as well to address those issues.
That'd
And
be
then
great.
there would be metrics, that are tracked on, how many businesses, how much money, et cetera, and that would
Okay.
be the basis for.
So the program that you would create, let's say they broken windows, you would create a program to fund replacement of broken windows?
Correct, in some way, shape,
Out
or
of the
form.
60,000?
The 90,000,
Okay.
yeah. And that was just for clarity, that was an example, just
Okay,
make it an
yes,
easy,
yes.
yeah, an easy example. Yeah, but whatever the feedback from the businesses is on what their pain points are and what keeps them up at night, we would investigate and try to create a program that would address that. So essentially, it's data-driven business response. So not just, economic development thinking this will be a great thing, but it's more the businesses responding and saying, this is what we need help in.
Are you doing the survey, are you conducting the survey yourself, or are you hiring someone to do it?
So the plan is to hire a company, it's a call center company, so they actually are experts in doing this type of work, and also working with city governments. And so there is, they have a lot of experience with this, and history, or historically speaking, when, let's say, lay people who are not trained in call center business, how to, I guess, be a call center person, it doesn't turn out that well. So this is very professional, it's scripted, and there's, immediate feedback, there's a team lead, there's, daily contact with the city, so it's a really very tight, very professionally run program.
Thank you.
One last question for me is, I know that are we partnering with the chamber with regard to this survey at all?
Great question. So we have had initial conversations with the chamber. I actually have another text out to the chamber to ask to kind of continue the conversations. It's not a formal anything, but it's certainly something I think that, as we start to work with the chamber on various programs, that we will be having conversations more deeply with them.
Yeah, apparently the legislature awarded 1.2 million to the chamber, and for economic development. I have no idea what that's to be used for, but
I'm not clear either, but I can certainly look into it.
okay, thank you. Well, there's been a motion and a second to move forward the proposal of Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Agreement to the June 6th, 2023 consent agenda for approval. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, and Councilmember Tran has left the committee. All right, now we're moving on to Economic Development Quarterly Update. And that is, again, is Tanya.
does this forward it? This advances it? Okay, great. Thank you, Council President. I appreciate the time for me to get this set up. So the Economic Development Department spoke with council and suggested making a quarterly update. So this will be the first of several quarterly updates in the future to come. And it is essentially a summary of what has been happening and what is planned in economic development at a very high level, broad strokes, not everything that's happening, but kind of the general buckets, and some of the kind of highlight programs or conversations or things that are going on. If there are any specific requests in future for any specific information, happy to oblige, and I will just continue. And if there are any questions, feel free to ask along the way. So essentially, at a high level in economic development, there are 5 practice areas. One of the practice areas is business attraction. The other 4 are business retention and expansion, workforce development, real estate use and reuse, and then finally, neighborhood development. And so this is just a kind of a high-level overview. In 2022, we had 1,629 new business licenses. A majority of those were home occupancy, which is, of course, let's say somewhat obvious based on the pandemic and what was happening with businesses at the time. We also had a total of 3,500 construction permits, and those construction permits totaled roughly $300 million. So that does mean that there was definitely some economic activity on the building side in the city. As Councilman Walsh knows, when we were in South Korea, we did meet with an organization called Big Bang Angels and had some kind of meet and greet initial conversations about whether they would have an interest, because they're a South Korean company. They have a collaboration with the Korean government, and they also are kind of a combination of a venture capital company and like an incubator accelerator company. They have launched over 100 companies, and there are several kind of AI, high-tech, a little bit more focused on healthcare industry companies that they are looking to potentially launch in the US. And so, of course, Federal Way having a very large Korean community, we presented this as being a good fit. And so as you, I'm sure, know, building these types of relationships takes time, so we're very grateful that we were able to go on the Sister Cities trip and have initial face-to-face conversations, and we will certainly keep you updated in the future, but that could be a very nice relationship with, the country that we just visited. So in addition to that, dovetailing into the Korean business list, we are working with the Korean American Association. We have over 50 Korean-owned businesses here, and so something that we are working on is to provide our sister city in Donghae, South Korea, with the list of our businesses that are Korean-owned, so that they can also promote that in their city for when there should be travel and tourism coming over to Washington State, specifically Seattle, and hopefully Federal Way. So a nice way to show them, that they also can find some comforts of home when they're on vacation. Updates on Pape. As you know, they are moving along with construction. I don't have an exact finish date for them, but we are in regular communications with them and moving them through the process. Burlington as well, they do have their sign up at the Commons, and they are generally finished with their build out, so they should be open for business soon. Smith Brothers, I was at their site this morning. They are hoping kind of maybe late summer that they will have their facility open, and we're working with them to help coordinate that through the process. Dick's Burgers, they are also on construction on the west side of the Commons, and they are continuing to build there, so we're hoping that they also sometime in the summer will be complete with their construction. And All City Fence, we will be meeting with them in the coming week to check in with them and see where they are at with their completion of their facility. IRG, I was not able to get a complete update on what happened at the legislature, but there were some discussions at the state legislature about some potential uses. There are some studies that are being circulated by the chamber surveys, which are asking for input on what potential uses of the headquarters building could be. And there are also a few other concepts that economic development is looking into to see if they may be viable tenants for the headquarters building. So more to come on that as things progress. DaVita, on their headquarters building, they have about 150,000 square feet that are available. And so we're also working with them and with other brokers and businesses to try to fill that space. And finally, the PAC and a hotel, as I believe Keith may have mentioned at some point, we are engaging with Columbia Hospitality to do a study to see what type of hotel and how many keys would be possible that could potentially go on the northwest corner of the TC3 site. And that study, the contract should be executed here shortly, and that study would take roughly 3 months to see what could be viable and what that could look like if there is something that's viable. And that would, of course, be in partnership. It would be a lone standing hotel, but also should be a hotel that would be able to partner and leverage the PAC and its facilities. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Councilmember Dovey, I can't see if you're on here. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do have one question. Thank you. When you talk about having a study on the PAC in a hotel, we just went through the TCP3 where that piece of property is set aside to be part of the development. Are we in sync between what is happening in community that we've been talking about with the developer and all that, or is this like two different paths?
Thank you for the question, Councilman Dovey. And we are in sync with One Trent, and we in fact had conversations today, and we're just updating them as well. So we are absolutely in sync with them, and they're on board.
But One Trent, if we do the deal with them, controls the property, correct?
The hotel property?
Well, no, I mean, we just went through this whole process, and that corner where you're talking about, that was part of what the process was. And I thought we were in the process of negotiating an agreement with One Trent to kind of do the takedowns and build everything. And, you know, that was kind of like a questionable area. So it seemed to me, is One Trent driving it, or are we driving it, or have we got an agreement that we're doing that? I mean, that's the first time I've heard we're even talking about a hotel still in that corner.
Were we going to keep that piece of property?
I thought we were going to it was talk about a garage, or, I mean, there's a whole bunch of talk. I just.
A hotel was one of the possibilities in the talks, so.
Keith Niven is going to speak now. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Council
sorry.
President Coach Mark. Councilmember Dovey, I'm not sure where you are, but good evening.
I got the white wall behind me.
So we talked about this with One Trent and said, you know, hey, if we go out there and hire a consulting firm to do a market study to see if there is market viability for a hotel, would you build it on that northwest corner due north of the PAC? And so that's the conversation we're going through now. So this study is going to inform whether or not a standalone hotel is marketable and what flag it would be. So in other words, what brand? And if all of that were to come together, what One Trent has said is that they would go ahead and build the hotel on that northwest corner of TC3 as part of their project and build out. So rather than it being maybe another residential building, it would be a hotel.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So we have, let's go with Deputy Mayor Honda this time.
Thank you. When Dick's broke ground, they told me they wanted to be open late May, early June. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Do they have a time that they anticipate that they'll be open?
I can confirm kind of when they anticipate. I don't have an exact kind of day, week, or month right now. So sometime, you know, in summer, but I can certainly confirm that. I was unable to reach our contact there before the meeting, so didn't want to give any misinformation.
There are other buildings being built along the outside of the commons. Do you know what is going into each of those if they have an occupant?
I can get back to you on that. There is, of course, Amazon in the main building, south of Amazon Fresh, there's Petco. There are also 2 offices, and then I believe it is a mattress store just immediately to the south of Dick's. But I can certainly get back to yourself and the committee and get kind of more exact details on that.
It's not Petco, it's a smaller pet store.
Okay, thank
but
you.
not Petco. Just wanted to, in case someone.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification, and I will get back to you on the
Thank
others.
you. Appreciate it. Oh, and one more question. The 300 million in construction permits, how does that compare with other cities? Are we in line with what other cities are doing?
I don't have an answer for that, but if you'd like, I can certainly get kind of rough comparisons if you'd like.
I'd be interested, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, just a couple going. With Smith Brothers, will they, there'll be employing a number of people there. Will they be bringing any significant tax dollars into the city? I mean, I doubt if they will be. It's mostly just their benefit will be employment, correct?
So it will be almost 100, between 80 and 100 employees, and that is a good question. Traditionally, distribution it gets taxed at the destination, or not traditionally, but in the last, almost 10 years. And I don't know if our attorney knows it, or if Keith knows it better than I do, but I don't know if that's considered distribution per se, if there's anything, that they're bringing in that they would get charged on, but I can certainly check into that for you.
Well, even if the distribution was taxed there, I think you're right. It's at the destination, but with it being food products, I don't think there'd be a sales tax on it anyway.
I'm not clear, but I would guess that because they are they're transiting through and they're distributing, so there are trucks that are bringing the other products like eggs and meat into the distribution center that will then be loaded onto the trucks that will then take those to be distributed to the households.
Yeah.
So my gut educated guess is that it will all be considered distribution, and it would be sales tax at point of distribution, not at point of origin.
Yeah. So the real benefit will be just more employment here.
And the secondary, tertiary, yeah. So essentially, with 100 people, they'll need to shop for things. They'll need to, go to lunch. They'll need to have meetings. So there'll be hotel stays involved, things like that. So there will definitely be secondary and tertiary benefits as well.
Okay, excellent. And with DaVita, they were originally filling the building, but they're downsizing. Do we know why that they're downsizing in Federal Way? I mean, they were consolidating stuff here.
I don't have exact details for you, but I know that, a lot of bigger businesses, they do have like work from home models, that are still kind of in force. And so it could be a combination of those and other kind of company happenings.
Okay, yeah, it'd be kind of nice to know what they're, whether it's just the work from home or whether they're going to other cities or what, to see what, kind of evaluate what we did right to get them and what we may or may not be doing right to keep them more, so. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Any other comments from anyone? Seeing none, I do. I did notice where DaVita is now down, opening a building down by the Supermall in Auburn, which is kind of interesting. I don't know what that building will be, but it's not.
That is more so the buildings that are here are like offices and administration and things like that. And DaVita does run, medical facilities, and so it's a medical facility. So kind of two different things. One's office and one's medical.
Okay.
Yeah. DaVita will also be opening a clinic, near my shop too, in the pavilion.
Oh, good. All right, and then a couple of questions suggestions I have, which I've talked with Tim Johnson about in the past, which is, our city seems to close down at 5 o'clock. We are dead after dark. And we just need some excitement going on around here. Like, we need to recruit some craft breweries or something to attract young folks or something with some excitement or something with some lights, because everything goes dark until, we have something at Christmas. But other than that, we either need some new retail or something with, that will attract our young folks to want to stay, live, and work in our community. So,
It's definitely coming. I appreciate the comment, and there may be a little bit of it kind of tied into what I alluded to in one of the last slides here that might help you to maybe get a better picture of the overall direction.
okay, thank you.
So, yeah, I'll go ahead and share that. And I, just in respect of time, I will speed along here. Oops.
Or you can just tell me. I need to go back.
Essentially, there's a two-pronged strategy. Activation, so starting to habituate people to come to certain areas. So leveraging certain events,
Okay.
as an example, events at the Aquatic Center. So seeing if there's a way to leverage when that event is happening, again, as an example, if there, for example, the last event that we just had 6,000 people coming. So working with hotels, working with local businesses, potentially having some activities going on.
No, actually, I'm just talking about new businesses. I'm talking about like maybe a wine tasting company that comes in and has a storefront. I'm talking about, so if you were in downtown Renton, you could walk down from your condo and go to different little shops in the area. We don't have that.
We're building it. So TC3 is definitely making a huge step in that direction. So, one of the things, and not to get into a bigger discussion on this, but the short answer is yes, we are definitely working towards that. It's unfortunately a little bit more complicated, and I'm happy to discuss it offline with
Sure.
how to get those type of businesses
Okay,
because they
just so long as I know you're working on it.
absolutely
Okay.
100%.
And then
yes.
my other question is, I've seen some buildings going up over on the IRG property, the old warehouse or property. I'm wondering what those are, if they're warehouses or what.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a map, there's the warehouse or headquarter building, and on the east side, I believe, is what you're
Yeah.
talking about. There's 2 warehouse buildings.
Yeah.
And so those are being constructed, and they're looking to fill that with tenants, and they are just warehouse and distribution, office, so mixed use in that way.
But we don't know what type of warehouse yet.
There are not tenants yet that I am aware of, so that is something that IRG is working on.
Okay, well, thank you.
I have a follow-up question with that. I understand that the road needs to be improved before the tenants might be able to move into those buildings. Is that correct?
I can certainly check on that. I believe that is correct. I don't know the detail on what type of improvements would be needed. I don't know if Keith knows offhand.
Will there be,
I don't think it's
trucks-
major. Yeah, I don't
big
think it's,
trucks moving off of 18 into the site, so the road needs to be able to handle that.
yeah, and I can certainly check into that. I don't know what the exact details are on the road improvements that are necessary, but certainly those have all been discussed and are underway.
Yeah, it looks like, it looks like that they have stakes and stuff out. It sounds like, looks to me like they're planning for that currently, is just my own observation.
Are they going to, do you know if they'll be leaving the roundabout there? Can you check into that too?
Yeah, absolutely. On the roundabout, sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, you still have more to talk about, right?
I'll run through it really quickly and I'll just highlight and then we can, we can come back to any topic you like. Just on business retention, for philosophical background, what economic development is really focusing on is business retention. So the businesses that are here, really working with them, making sure that they stay here, helping them to grow. So that's really kind of the cornerstone of the economic development philosophy, to kind of help our businesses that are here and help them thrive and grow and stay in Federal Way. We did have a Korean business digital literacy course that we held at the library in conjunction with a couple of other partners, and that was pretty successful. We had about 40 Korean businesses that attended, and we were helping them to learn how to become digitally literate and set up their websites for their businesses. We already talked about the business outreach, and we already talked about the incubator. And then the last slide on here is the tourism master plan, which Council President Kochmar, and I think there were a couple other questions on what we could be using the tourism fund for, the lodging tax fund. And essentially what we will be proposing to the lodging tax committee, and they have expressed their interest in this and their support, at least verbally, for it, is to apply, the city would apply, the city is allowed to apply for funding, and the city would apply to essentially engage a destination management consultancy, and that consultancy would help to create a tourism master plan. And a tourism master plan is not a map like, to put certain buildings in certain places. Essentially what it is at a very high level, taking an inventory of what the city has to offer, taking a look at the tourism landscape. And I think, as I may have mentioned before, there are myriad different types of tourism. For example, there's drive tourism, which really exploded during COVID. There's business tourism, of which we have quite a large bit because we get a lot of the overflow from Kent, the Kent Valley, doing business. There's also regional tourism. There's sports tourism, and so it's taking what types of tourism into the lens of what are the attractions and assets that we have in the city. And then also, to come back to Council President, your point before, a two-pronged strategy of what do we have, how can we start activating what we have? So essentially what I call habituating people to come to a certain area. For example, downtown, this is a great strategy to start, having small things that are happening in downtown to start habituating people to come downtown, to understand, what is being offered and kind of on an ongoing basis in downtown. And then as we start to develop and build, what that will do is that starts to catch the eye of businesses where they say, hey, I see this, space over here that's vacant. That would be great for my coffee shop. And then they come in and they lease that coffee shop, seeing that there is activation there. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing where if we activate it, they will come. And so that will then start to fill up some of the more, vacant spaces in the areas that we activate. And I'm sure you can figure it out from there. That starts to build and grow and, build kind of a little bit more of a buzz and vibrancy, which is what we're looking for. So kind of planting the seed, helping it grow, and over time, that is the plan, both with the tourism master plan, with downtown, dovetailing all those projects together so that we're not working in silos, but that we're all kind of working together to make sure that we can make a vibrant downtown.
Thank you.
I have a question on the business retention.
Sure.
Do you know, now that COVID is officially considered over, do you know how many businesses we lost during COVID and how many businesses we might have gained since COVID has slowed down?
It's kind of an age-old question that gets asked everywhere. And the way that it works with business licenses is a business does not have to, not to go into big detail, but a business is active or on hold or inactive, and that's something that happens at the Department of Revenue at the state level. So there's not really a way that you can actively track one-to-one, because a business doesn't have to, the day it closes its doors, say we're inactive. And so there's no way that you can really track and keep track of who's open or who closes and at what time. What we can do is just give like a general trend. For example, last year, just as an example number, we had 2,000 businesses, and this year we have 2,500. But you can't really do the math to see, well, these 15 businesses closes and these 50 open, because there's no way of us to be able to, even the Department of Revenue at the state level can't tell you that. So it is unfortunate, but all we can do is at the high level numbers and do the delta that way.
And you talked about a Korean business Korean business digital literacy course.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you only do the Korean businesses and not all businesses who might be interested?
Thank you for the question. It was a collaboration between One Eastside Spark. They were doing something in South King County. They received a grant, and so there were several partners, and it was a very specific grant for this opportunity. And so we talked to them and said, we would love to sponsor a small part of it. There is space at the King County Library, so they actually had it at the King County Library down the road here. And so it was a very specific grant that we were in support of and helped to execute. So it was just an opportunity that we took. It wasn't anything that we were actively seeking. It just fell in our lap and we took advantage of it.
Is it something that you found was helpful to the businesses and you would offer it to all businesses?
Yes. In general, it was very helpful, and it is something definitely on the economic development side that we have a outline and a framework for a digital literacy program. So more to come on that. It's a little bit more robust of a program that is more complete. So this is kind of a one and done, one day, couple hour thing. But what we are starting to put a framework around is something that's kind of ongoing, and it's an ecosystem that allows businesses to have that kind of ongoing support, if you will, not just kind of a one and done.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for your presentation. We look forward to what you have to tell us in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
So now we'll move on to the next item H, which is the resolution fee schedule, and Steve Groom, you're up.
Oh, I was looking over there for him. Look on here for him.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me, and you should have a full screen presentation on your, that you all can see.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. Chase and I are remote. We're down at the National Finance Conference in Portland, but we are keeping our lodging tax dollars in Washington. We're staying in a hotel in Vancouver. This agenda item is to bring a few fee updates that were brought to finance from other departments. And so we've consolidated them into a new proposed fee schedule and the accompanying resolution in your packet. You have the entire detailed fee schedule in the packet with the proposed new dollar amounts or percentages in red font. And I apologize that the fonts are so small. We will work on getting those larger, turn it from 10 pages to 20 pages, maybe to get the fonts bigger, but they're in red so that anybody can see them. You also have a memo, and I have just 3 slides here that I will summarize for anybody watching what the memo says, for anyone who happens to be watching and hasn't seen the memo. Let's see if I can advance. There we are. On the fee schedule in section 3, we have essentially it's a correction. This is simply to revert a fee that the city wasn't the right agency to determine the fee. And in section 7, that's for aligning the fee from an hourly calculation to a lump sum cost. And the process itself is staff intensive. That involves a lot of departments. And I can see the wisdom in doing what other agencies do, not adding a lot of tracking of time across departments and further administrative time to calculate and bill to collect the fee. Also in section 7, we have an edit of the hourly rate and a fixed fee for the materials and postage. And lastly, the new item is the residential park impact fees, which I know community development and parks have been working on and have presented on, and I won't attempt to offer a concise explanation of it here. I believe they're also present there live in the meeting if we have questions. It's been publicly explained, and my role here is to make sure that it gets on the fee schedule and it coincides with the budget amendment, which already went through FedRAC, and it has had the first reading at City Council last week. So to summarize, these are the fees being changed, reverted, or proposed. The resolution has been through legal and it's in your packet, and that's what council is recommended to approve when it comes to regular meeting. So with your approval, the resolution and accompanying fee schedule will come to council June 6th with an effective date of June 14th. That is my summary. I will stop sharing and we will take questions, and I will probably rely on others there to help.
Thank you very much, Steve. Councilmember Dovey, as a member of the committee, any questions?
No, I think, I see what we got. We have the fees for the park fee per door in the city of Federal Way, so that works for me. Looks good. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I see Deputy Mayor Honda.
Perhaps it would be good to have, for people watching this and learning that we could possibly have a park fee, that maybe Keith could talk about how we came to that number?
I'm going to defer to one of these 2 other gentlemen.
All right.
Who are probably smarter than me on this, but thank you for the confidence.
I have a lot of confidence in you.
I appreciate that.
All right, I don't see anything else. Anybody else?
Well, no.
I'm
Jason's
sorry,
gonna
Chase,
talk
go
about
ahead.
that.
Yeah, and so as you, through the various presentations, we had, staff had originally proposed it was about $2,800, $2,900 fee, which was the maximum per the methodology that the FCS group had worked up for us. Based on council deliberations, talks, discussion, there was a sense of concern and wanted to be more in line. We didn't want to be the highest, we didn't want to be the lowest, and so based on hearing those concerns from City Council, we tried to slot ourselves kind of in between and I can't remember the two exact cities, but I want to say it was like Kent and Tukwila, or Auburn and Tukwila, or Auburn and Burien, and situated ourselves right in between there at the $2,200. Again, Parks Department would love to see that amount be as much as possible, but that slots us there. I think it keeps us competitive. Like I say, we're not the high, we're not the low. Hopefully that's the Goldilocks. But, I think it's reasonable to set that rate right now. And then, maybe after a year and the pros plan completion, when we need to update that infill list, we could relook at how it's performing, and council can make some judgments there on whether or not it's appropriate, needs to go up, needs to go down from there.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda?
So if this is voted on and approved by the council, the fee will stand for at least a year, and then it could be modified at that point?
It could be modified it's got to be with a budget amendment or a fee schedule, and so we have the parameters that allow to about that $2,900, and I'm just using the round numbers. It's not the exact number from FCS report, but at any time council approves to make changes to the fee schedule, that rate can be changed up to the maximum allowed in the methodology that FCS Group did. And so, as we talked about is going through this process, the idea was to get these park impact fees imposed, knowing that we have a full pros plan, Brook Lake master plan, and Steel Lake master plan coming, knowing that that project infill list is going to grow. There's going to be more eligible projects that come about of that. So that will change the calculation. So the goal would be, after we get those master plans and pros plan updates complete, share those lists with FCS Group, let them rework those lists and give us a new maximum that at that point council could adopt and set or change. Or again, at any time the fee schedule is being updated or changed, council can elect to adjust that number.
So I see this will, if passed by the committee, will go to council business. So there'll be a presentation about what our fees are anyway and our impact fees are anyway, so that council can understand what we have compared to other cities, I hope.
I will make sure I have that
Okay.
information available for you, Councilwoman Honda, and yeah, like I say, right now it's on there, and
Okay.
Second reading, it would be in regards to the fee schedule specifically, but I will let you know exactly where we slotted that and what cities we positioned between.
That would be good information. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, and I, just looking at, these aren't on fees that are changed, and this wouldn't be for you, Jason, it'd be more for Director Groom. On the, for example, the business, some of the building fees are based on the number of employees. Is that FTEs or the total number of employees? And you're on mute if you're.
I think I'm going to have to ask Chase to help me out because he knows the answer.
Yeah, so one of the requirements for the business license process is for businesses to report their total number of employees on the Department of Revenue site, and then that determines the amount that's charged to them when they go and apply for that on the Department of Revenue, and that's total number of employees,
Okay.
not just FTEs.
Okay, yeah. Seems like it should be FTEs, but anyway. And then also a couple of the fees, and once again, this is on existing fees, just for my own clarification. On some, there's a city administrative fee that's like 5% of different things, and also an automation fee. Why do we have the add-on fees there instead of that just being part of the basic fee, instead of having extra fees? And it sounds like Keith knows the answer to this.
You've had to come up anyway, Keith.
I was going to guess that was that was out of RCWs, but I'm glad Keith knows it. If Keith knows the answer, I would have to research it.
So, that's kind of two different questions. One is the administrative fee. And so, for example, like I'll take school impact fees. So in the city code, it says it gives the city the ability to charge an administrative fee beyond the school impact fee, because what happens is we have a lot of staff processing time to take those checks in, to then get it recorded through finance, and then ultimately cut a check to the school district for those school impact fees. So part of it, where there is an administrative fee added on, it's to at least get some return on city staff time that's spent processing those. Okay. In terms of the automation fee, that's a very specific thing that was added that allows us to collect a certain fee to improve the technology that we have associated with our development and permitting process. So for example, all of the systems that we have, the software that we have, the computers and the screens and everything, that benefits the developers because it allows us to do our jobs better and quicker and more efficiently. And so there's a fee that we can collect by RCW, and we do, that then funds some of those things that are really development funded kind of cost to the city.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now I know, and now the 5 other people watching online know also.
All right, well, it looks like we're done with the discussion on the resolution fee schedule. Councilmember Dovey, do you have?
Yeah, I have a motion I move to forward the proposed resolution to the January 6, 2023 council business agenda.
Let's try that again. I move to forward the proposed resolution to the June 6th, 2023 council business for approval. You want to second that?
Approval. I second that.
Okay. All in favor, let's say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you very much. All right. Now we're moving forward to the AP vouchers. Again, Steve Groom.
I'm going to report on these vouchers this evening. Good evening, Council President Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council Committee members, and public. Before you are the AP vouchers from 4/15/2023 to 5/15/2023, and payroll vouchers for 4/1/2023 and to 4/30/2023, respectively, in the amount of $3,194,289.05 for AP vouchers, and payroll vouchers in the amount of $3,003,472.40. And we did send out an email with some questions that were asked beforehand by Deputy Mayor Honda.
Yes, thank
but
you. I
we'd be happy
appreciate
to answer any others that you may have.
I appreciate you taking time to do that.
Yeah, glad to do it. And thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Dovey?
Okay, Linda, I move to forward the vouchers to the June 6, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Good job. And I'll second that. Any questions? Let's take the motion, let's move it, and then I have a question. All in favor, let's say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Chase, could you remind me, what is our total annual budget for both operating and capital? And then what is our annual operating budget? Just remind me.
Let me pull it up really quick, since I can be specific. Give me one more moment. Apologize.
Chase is going to the city's website and he's going to the finance page and he's opening our budget. So
Hey,
on the fly.
I like to, I'm a numbers guy. So,
Steve?
so the total city budget is for the 2023 adopted budget is $154,758,165, and 2024 adopted budget is $187,211,223. That includes all expenditures and transfers out between funds. The capital The amount that would be taken off of that total amount would be $25,837,751 for 2023 and $29,296,593 2024, which would include kind of your transfers between funds. So that wouldn't be an operating. An additional, your capital outlay expenditure within 2023 of $28 million and $55 million in 2023 and 2024 respectively. So you would deduct those from both of those years to get to your operating only component of the budget. And that's on pages 28 and 29 of the adopted budget book. That's out on the city's finance page. And those are good reference pages to kind of give to constituents if you needed specific numbers between operating and capital budgets.
Thank you, Chase. Okay,
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Are people using the online budget information or financial information, the new program?
I think we're starting to. We haven't looked at the analytics. There was a little bit. We haven't received any inquiries or haven't had any citizens asking for any follow-up or any how-to questions.
Do you think our citizens know that it exists? We haven't really talked about it at a council meeting or presented it, or this is for your benefit kind of discussion, and maybe we should at some point?
Agree. We will. I think we've mentioned it to our city administrator and mayor for an agenda setting.
I'll bring it up next time then.
Great. We're happy to contribute.
And then I have another question on LTAC tourism enhancement grants. There was mention that we would need to do a budget amendment. When would we do that?
The first quarter budget amendment is already in process. The second quarter budget amendment would come as soon as we are closing the books for June. So that would be probably for the July FedRAC.
Okay.
We have a level of comfort that tourism enhancement grants have to file a report following their event before we disperse. So I have confidence that our budget amendment will be able to be done in time before we have to write checks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So seeing no further discussion, we're now on to the final item on the agenda, the monthly financial report. And Steve Groom, you're still up.
I'm hearing eagerness in your voice, and I can't tell whether it's because you're looking forward to the item or because it's the last item and we'll be done.
Oh, absolutely. Your report, of course.
But this agenda item is to keep you briefed on how the city as a whole is tracking to the adopted budget, and also to keep you current as council members for your decision making. As always, I'll give you an update mostly on revenue, since the budgeted expenses depend in part on whether our forecasted revenue comes to pass in real life, and also because invoices tend to lag. So departments managing their department budgets is the internal control at this point in the year. But we really do want to make this interesting, relevant, and informative. Finance staff has prepared financials for the month. So this is the information we have as of April 30th, 4 months into the year, which is actually 33% if we're, 1/3 of the way, if we're tracking things that occur monthly, 1/12 every month. Through 4 months, so we want to really make this relevant. And for you at City Council, we want to make sure that this is your fiscal governance. We want to make sure that we are bringing it to you so that you're monitoring the city's performance, whether we're keeping within the budget that was adopted. We want to make sure that we are being accountable so that we're monitoring revenues that were appropriated. And we're also going to confirm investment activity within policy guidelines. Through 4 months, revenues are favorable. And, we kind of get used to seeing this. And I don't want to minimize it and just gloss over it, because it's really important that we continue to see favorable numbers. So this is the high-level executive summary, and it's early in the year, but both revenues and expenses continue to be favorable. Revenues by 1.4 million and expenses so far by just under 1 million. The pacing of receiving invoices always lags, so we just have to watch it every single month, and we do make sure that every department gets their departmental budget so that they can track their spending. How are revenues coming in? We forecasted back in October all of the city revenues, so that's how long ago the budget was adopted. But all of these revenues give us a picture of how the local economy is doing, and it also gives us confidence that the expenses we budgeted that depend on the revenue are still good to go. While we have some indicators in the red, there's more good news this month than there was last month. Last month we had 3 in the red. This month there's only 2. I want to point out that these are cumulative. So this is through the 4 months that we've closed the books on, although some of them we get on a little bit of a lag. So this isn't just the month of April. This is the cumulative since the beginning of the year. The top 6 revenues on this chart are the ones that support general funds, and the bottom 2, kind of separated by a blank line there, are our restricted funds. And I have graphs on each of these, which should look familiar every month. And so let's look at them starting on the next page. Sales tax. This is one of our 2 graphs that has got a $20 million scale. So this is a big number. And as you can see, it's positive. It looks like a little tiny gap there where the red line is exceeding both the blue line from prior year and the gray, which is the budget. But this is something that we can tell anybody in our city, businesses in our city, that the local economy, according to our sales tax receipts, that we are seeing 7% ahead of what we budgeted, and we budgeted generally kind of cautiously. We're 16% over prior year. That's a great thing. That's a really good thing to be able to brag about for our city. Utility tax, also a $20 million scale. We're 18% over budget, and we are 8% over prior year. How do we explain that? Largely, it was a cold winter, and the electricity and the gas were just favorable. And again, I think we budgeted kind of cautiously. Again, good news for how we budget and good news for how the city's doing. Property tax. This is one where, as you know, property tax comes in 2 kind of pieces. The first in April and May, and then the second kind of trickles in October, November. So the timing within the year can look funny, but generally we expect that what we predict, what we budgeted, what the assessor calculated at the beginning of the year, we generally it's very probable, very certain. Real estate excise tax, we have a little bit of a different story, and this is because while property values went up 19% last year, the property, the homeowners and the business owners who own the properties, they retained their value. However, this is a tax on transactions, so the pace of transactions, the number of transactions has slowed, almost certainly attributable to mortgage rates, because we all know that the Federal Reserve has been raising rates incrementally. We expect that rates will stay level for a few months, and then we expect them to drop. And the reason we think that is because inflation, the rate of inflation has come down, but also the impact on the banking industry, is something that the Fed is really watching. So we think that rates will come down. That would have a probable impact that real estate excise tax would resume or recover, if you will. But we're watching this every month. Also, as a city, we have an ability somewhat to control our parks and our public works projects. So if we had to, we could slow the pace of our spending as well. Lodging tax revenue. This one is a touch under budget. 11% kind of sounds like a large percent, but it's really only $7,000, and it is just a touch over prior year. And this is really, I still want to call it good news because the hospitality and tourism industry just had 2 terrible years. So the fact that we are this close back to where we want to be, the scale of this is back up to a budget of nearly $300,000, and we expect that we're going to be in that range. That's a big change from last year and the year before, where we were seeing down as low as $150,000. Our investment revenue, this is where we are taking, where we are really seeing the results of our new investment program that we started last year, but also we can't take all the credit because interest rates rose. So we are seeing really favorable interest revenue on the city's cash, on the city's reserves. I didn't even try putting percents because they were ridiculous percents that were coming in over budget and over prior year. And we will, and most of the investments that we are doing have a 4-year investment maturity. So we have a pretty good degree of certainty that this will continue for the remainder of the year. Just to be accountable and transparent, our cash balances are still steady. Part of the cash balance here still includes $15 million of ARPA money that has not been dispersed. Council authorized spending, but until we get invoices, why we're being cautious. That's why we're keeping still quite a bit of liquidity in the state pool. That's those green bars. But as you can see, the cash position of the city has been strong and steady. We just need to make sure that we show that to you.
Steve,
Yes,
when does the ARPA money need to be spent by?
it needs to be obligated by the end of 2024, and we are allowed to disperse through 2026.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Sure.
Steve, I hear that with the discussions with Biden and on the federal budget, they're talking about, one of the things is to have the cities give back the unspent ARPA funds. That's one of the discussions between the groups that are negotiating. I don't know if you've heard that.
I certainly have. We file a compliance report quarterly, and everything that the council has approved, we have reported as obligated. We've got a commitment. The departments have gone ahead and acted on your authorizations. So I think we're going to be in good shape. Thank you for being vigilant and double checking to make sure that we are too.
Thank you.
Certainly. This screen, I'm not sure if you're able to see. Yeah, this shows what the federal funds rate has been, because when I was mentioning the real estate excise tax, the rates going up. This is the rate and the pace that the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, and you can see within the last year they just did quite a bit of increases. And how has that affected the rates that we're investing at? The investment rates we're seeing kind of peaked last month at 4.5, and this is the 2-year constant maturity index because we have a 4-year maturity window. Kind of the average is 2 years. So this is the benchmark we look at to make sure that that the investments that we're purchasing are in line with the economy that we're seeing. And we're seeing that the market thinks that investment rates are going to be coming down. This is a graph that shows how much we have of what we've invested when it matures. So most months we have $1 million coming due, and then when those, we have $48 million that matures once a month, and when each one matures, we just go out and we buy a 4-year maturity, and then we have a handful of investments that we've matured much shorter, and when those mature, we'll reinvest them at shorter term rates. That's the investment activity we're doing. This last month, we had a $1 million maturity. And what matured was only earning 1.8, and then our reinvestment, we were able to get 4.9%. So we're still raising the average of what our investments are getting. So to conclude our report, we are managing to budget. Almost all revenues are almost all favorable. We're monitoring REIT. The expenses are on track within budget. Our cash balances are strong, and the investments, we're preparing for a rate drop. And so by locking in 4-year maturities, we'll be able to keep our revenue that's budgetable and spendable for quite a while. That concludes the report. I'm open for any questions. Thank you very much for letting us share.
Sure, thank you. Councilmember Dovey, as member of the committee, any questions?
No, you ready for me to make a motion?
No,
In a
I have
minute.
Question.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
So I noticed that the utility rebate program has 13 people who have applied this year. And that's really low, but I do want to thank Sherry for all of her work on it, because you have done an amazing amount of work on this year, and I appreciate it. And I don't know what to do to get people to apply, but thank you for all the work you've done on it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sherry. So, Councilmember Sabadossin, any final words? Okay. All
I
right.
have.
Just thank you,
for the
Steve.
presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah. I was just saying thank you, Steve. Good report.
And I will reiterate that. Thank you, Steve. Good report. So, now, Councilmember Dovey.
Okay, my last one to read. I move to forward the April 2023 monthly financial report to the June 6, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Excellent, and I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. So, so Steve and Chase, have a good time on your, at your conference. And anybody else with any other, we are now at the point of other. Seeing none. Our future meeting agenda, the next FedRec meeting will be June 27th, 2023 at 5 p.m. And we are now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all.
Bye.
Bye.
See you, Jack.
Thank you.
Bye, Jack.
See you, Lydia.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's now 6:50 p.m. Thank you.
Bye-bye.